What's going on? We're going to try this out. Been having some technical difficulties with Periscope. It looks like everything is good right here. Technical difficulties. Let me turn some sound down here. Bear with me. Periscope. There we go. Sorry. All right. So, figure we try some new content. Every day, obviously, on the Flying 180 Twitter stream, we go over scheduling, we go over the top stories of the day, covering all aspects of the racing industry, from the races themselves to the tracks, to scheduling, to the latest automotive news, which is a little bit more geared toward motorsports. But I figured what we would do is kind of touch on the stories that are in the stream on a daily basis that seem to gather the most traffic. And it seems that today there are a couple good ones, a couple ones that could really open up some pretty significant discussion. Obviously, discussion is two-way, so hopefully, guys, and girls, feel free to jump in here. But one of the top stories on the Flying 180 Twitter stream today was a feel-good story that Robert Wickens, the Indy driver, who had a spinal cord injury while racing, is aggressively recovering from his injury. So he has also expressed that he would like to return to IndyCar racing, utilizing hand controls in an IndyCar. God bless. I mean, I think that's awesome. I think anything that can help someone get back in the driver's seat is a good thing. However, this is one of those conversations that could get really tricky and really difficult on a technical basis, and from, I guess, the racing rules and regulations aspect of things is, I could see a conversation coming up, and I'm completely unbiased here, completely objective, but both sides do need to be addressed, acknowledged, and discussed. And that's all I'm trying to do, not trying to take a side in a discussion like this. However, I could see it arise that people would say, would hand controls give an unfair advantage to a racer? So if you have 20 guys on a grid, and one of them is using hand controls, and then all of a sudden he's shifting faster, or he's able to utilize the throttle a bit more accurately. Who knows? Maybe there's a combination or coordination that could be executed a little bit faster with your upper body than with your whole body, and maybe that could be proven. You know what? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know the facts behind any of that or any of the science behind any of that. However, I simply come from a place that anything that could assist someone in recovering from an injury like that, getting them back into racing, is an unbelievably great thing. So I wish Robert Wickens nothing but the best in his recovery, and hope for a full recovery, not only in his personal life but in his professional career, that may lead to him one day being back in a driver's seat. Right? I just hope that he doesn't come up against too many harsh critics or too many really misguided opposition, people who are just looking to make a point against him for the fact that he is using hand controls. I just hope it doesn't get kind of nasty like that, where some people take exception to him using hand controls. However, what is nice is that at the Honda IndyCar race in Toronto, he will be in a Acura NSX that has been prepped and actually reconfigured for hand controls, and he will be leading the parade lap or the one of the initial laps of the race, and which is kind of nice. I think that's great. And supposedly he already tested the car out, got a feel for it, and it was his first time back in a car, driving a car since his accident. So I think that's I think that's phenomenal, and I think it's amazing. And God bless him for getting back to this point from spinal cord injury. I mean, holy moly, that's just incredibly awesome news. So wish him nothing but the best, and hopefully it all turns out for the best for everyone. If and when he does make his way back into an IndyCar seat. So, all right, that's one of the top stories of the day. We're just going to go through the top three. At any point in time, I'd love to hear opinions. Some of these stories, like I said, there's a lot of angles you can approach these stories from, so feel free to chime in. Second story, Corvette C8, the Corvette C8 steering wheel. That was one of the top stories today. What can I say? It looks like any other typical sports car racing wheel. I don't know why. I guess a lot of followers on my stream have Corvettes, I guess, but that was one of the top stories today. I really don't know how much to comment on this because I don't have a Corvette. It's not subjective, and I guess and it's not a big story. It's just a blurb about how the design of the wheel was released. You can see over here. I don't know if you can partially or fully see, but yeah, that's the second story. All right. Let's move on. Third story. This is a doozy. Formula One. How much time you got? This is a doozy. Formula One is considering bringing back refueling to Formula One races. Now, let's discuss the reason for it. Why is it being discussed, right? It's being discussed because top drivers are complaining that the cars are too heavy. And why are they too heavy? They're too heavy because there's no refueling. The cars are starting races with a full tank of gas. So they're at their heaviest points at the beginning, obviously. This is a rule that was kind of stopped, outlawed, banned back in 2010. And, I remember very clearly what it was like watching a Formula One race when refueling was still part of the strategy. And it would go something like this. All right? The race would start, and you'd see Schumacher first, Hakkinen second, Montoya third, whatever. And that's the way the race would start. And then every team would have not only a different tire strategy, but a different refueling window strategy. So you could have some cars trying to make a whole race maybe on one refuel, but then you'd have other teams maybe making 3 or 4. Now, why is that? Obviously, a fuller tank of gas can carry you further, but less of a tank of gas would make the car lighter and faster. So the race would start, the first refueling window would hit, and this is back prior to 2010, right? Now, all of a sudden, in the standings, everybody's pitting at different times, right? First place guy, second place guy, maybe a third of the field will pit, do a refuel, and then, everyone's doing their own strategy. Now, from that first refueling window until basically the last refueling window, which would be maybe 10 laps before the end of the race, if you were on one of those multi-stop strategies, like a 3 or 4 stop strategy for refueling. Basically, from the first one to the last one, you'd have no idea who was winning the race. If you think about it, who's winning the race? You'd see a running order, all of a sudden the guy who started 14th on the grid by the second pit window is now first, but that's only because he hasn't pitted yet, and other people who are on multi-stop strategies are actually going to go flying by when that guy pit. Like, so there's all this pit lane, you know, you have the pit lane delta, you know, obviously that was calculated, that became a big part of everything, and you know, so you had no idea. And I remember being at Formula One watching parties, you know, and you'd be sitting there watching, and people like would walk in during the race, and they'd say, "Oh, hey, you know, who's winning?" And it would be like, you know, right in the middle, like lap 35 of 70 or something. And I'd be like, "I don't know." And they'd be like, "No, who's winning?" And I'd be like, I don't know. You just don't know who's winning the race. So even when Schumacher had that run of all those championships, he'd go out, and when the first pit window would open up, obviously he'd pit, but then he'd fall down because other people hadn't pit yet, so he'd be somewhere down in the order, and he'd shuffle through the order, and then by like I said, 10 laps before the end, when the last pit window kind of was for people who were on those multi-stop strategies, all of a sudden there he was again in first place. And he'd stay there and win the race. But from lap 10 to lap 60, he was just shuffled through the order because of the way everybody was pitting. So you have no idea. You have no idea who's winning the race for 80% of your viewing of the race. You have no idea, right? So I get why they would want to incorporate it back into racing. I get it. It makes the cars lighter, quicker, and so on, and probably more fun for the drivers to drive. I mean, the article references Vettel and Hamilton being big proponents of bringing this back. Actually, it was Jean Todt who, you know, obviously the former Ferrari principal during Schumacher's days, who proposed this. I mean, and he's the you know, he's the president of the FIA now. So he proposed this, and this is you know, another thing to consider during, you know, when you have refueling in F1 was the safety aspect of it. So you know, there were those times when they couldn't get fuel into the car. Do we want to bring back all those elements around pump failure, right? Pump failure can occur in a couple different ways. It can come in the form of an unsecure seal and fuel spraying, and that was an issue because now you have hot exhaust and you have fuel spraying and so on. I mean, that's happened. Don't tell me it hasn't. It's happened. Do we want that to be an issue? I don't know. You know, it's a deep discussion with many different viewpoints, and I think one of the main reasons that refueling disappeared was for safety, right? If you remember, prior to 2010, before they banned it, you had everyone in pit lane wearing these fire suits. I mean, they still do. They're still wearing protective clothing, but we're talking fire suits, right? And the big tanks and the high pressure nozzles, you know, and it's a lot of extra equipment. It's a bigger expense. It's, I don't know. They initially got rid of it because of safety reasons. I mean, that was one of the main reasons. But in bringing it back, you know, you're bringing it back. You're challenging that safety aspect again for the sake of the drivers enjoying a lighter car. I don't know. correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, this is it's too big of a topic to really solve in a one-way discussion right now. But I wish more people would jump into this, and I would love to hear. I would love to hear pro racers discussing this, and love to hear the officials discussing this, and read transcripts of the ultimate decision as to how this plays out. If something like that were ever to be released, it would be extremely interesting to read into. But I think since refueling has been banned in 2010, from that point forward, that's one aspect, believe it or not, for me personally, that I have not missed. I'm not saying I missed it because I disliked it. I liked it and disliked it. I liked it from the strategic aspect of things, but I disliked it for the main reason I just mentioned, is that for 80% of the race, you have no idea who's winning the race. And I kind of enjoy, I very much enjoy watching a race now, Formula One. And through the stops, you have a much greater sense as to who's winning a race from the first pit window through to the last pit window. And you know very easily, because now it's just based on, you have to use this set of tires, and this guy has to get on this set of tires, and certain tires have to be used. You know basically what's about to happen. So you can predict, okay, he's on this, he's got to get in there, he's got to make a pit, he's got to change tires or whatever. So you have a much greater sense as to how things will unfold. With refueling prior to 2010, you had no idea, because all the team principals played their cards close to the sleeve. You had no idea, nobody did, what their strategy was going into that race. You didn't know. Maybe they were going to run a soft and then fill up, and then run greater distance on a hard tire, and who knows? You don't know. But now, right now, you do know, and that's what makes it a little bit more enjoyable, at least from my perspective. And I would love to hear what other people think of it, because I'm sure a lot of people have opinions on this. But that's a deep discussion. That's something that could, once again, I would love to hear all the facets of that discussion. Love to hear how that plays out. That's the deal. Anyway, this is just a quick one. Figured I'd throw it out there. But feel free, comment, questions, comments, suggestions. Throw it toward my Twitter at Flyin1AT, FLYIN, the number 1, the number 8, the letter T. And you know what? We'll try to do one of these quick little Periscope sessions here and there for top tweets. Definitely check out the Flyin1AT YouTube channel. That's where I have the bigger perspective full stream, like the full race weekend schedule cast, and the race weekend recap cast is all on the YouTube channel. So I might make different content for different platforms. Anyway, once again, thank you very much for stopping in. Feel free to throw some comments my way. Thumbs up, thumbs down, you like it. If you like it, follow it. Please follow on Periscope. Please subscribe on Twitter. I appreciate the support, and probably see you guys tomorrow over the weekend. All right? Have a good night. Bye-bye.